tape 1 was wrapped tightly in decaying electrical tape, the adhesive melting into the plastic. A faded white sticker simply read, "The Smiling Incident." It was a preserved broadcast master of a heavily syndicated Saturday morning educational cartoon from 1984, an episode that supposedly never existed.
The recording begins exactly as you would expect. The clown is teaching his audience how to count to 10, but at exactly 3 minutes and 14 seconds into the runtime, the structural integrity of the animation violently degrades. The cheerful, upbeat background music slows down to an agonizing crawl. It warps into a low, deafening hum, a frequency so deep it actually made the concrete walls of my archive room vibrate. The clown stops juggling. He stops speaking. The character model slowly turns its head, breaking the fourth wall to stare directly through the convex glass of the television screen. In the official public record, this silent, unbroken stare lasted for 10 atomizing minutes on live television. Local network executives blamed a catastrophic hardware failure at the transmission tower. They claimed a disgruntled technician had hijacked the feed, but a hijacked signal cannot rewrite physical animation cells that were painted months in advance, and it certainly does not explain why the animated figure raises its hand, presses it against the glass, and taps a distinct rhythmic pattern from the inside of the television set. Classified police reports from that Sunday morning document that over 300 parents in the greater metropolitan area woke up to find their homes completely silent. Their living rooms were empty. Their front doors were wide open, letting in the freezing November wind. The televisions were still glowing, emitting that same low-frequency hum. The children were never located. As the tape automatically ejected into my hands, the ambient temperature in the archive room plummeted. The silence was deafening, until I heard a faint tapping sound coming from the welted door behind me. I forced myself to ignore the tapping at the vault door. I slid the second cassette into the heavy metal deck. Tape 2 was a local television commercial from 1993. It was a regional broadcast promoting a revolutionary new interactive doll, funded by a company that had dissolved completely overnight. The advertisement starts with a cheerful, high-energy jingle. A young actress smiles brightly, holding a heavy porcelain-faced doll with wide, glassy eyes. The voiceover promises that this toy will be your best friend forever. But 15 seconds into the commercial, the lighting in the studio abruptly changes. The cheerful jingle distorts, dropping 3 octaves. The little girl's smile falters. Her eyes dart nervously off camera into the darkness. The vibrant colors of the toy aisle drain away, swallowed by absolute pitch black. The cheerful jingle distorts, dragging into a slow, mournful synthesizer drone. The young actress stops reading her lines. Her smile completely vanishes. She looks terrified, staring into the darkness directly behind the camera lens. Then, the porcelain doll in her hands moves on its own. It slowly tilts its head upward. Its jaw cracks open with the sound of snapping plastic.
A deep, synthesized voice does not come from the doll, but seems to bleed directly through the studio microphones. It whispers a single, highly specific medical term. The commercial cuts back to the girl. She drops the doll. A massive, unnatural shadow reaches out from the darkness and grabs her shoulder.
The broadcast instantly cuts to dead static. The company never released the toy. The actress was never credited, and no casting agency had a record of her employment. I paused the VCR, my heart hammering against my ribs. But when I looked at my own reflection in the dark, blank glass of the monitor, I realized the heavy breathing I was hearing wasn't my own. I spun around, my flashlight cutting through the suffocating darkness of the archive room. There was nothing there. Just dust and isolation. I took a shaking breath and loaded tape 3.
The third cassette was entirely unlabeled. When the tracking settled, it revealed raw, unedited studio footage from a canceled public access children's show in 1998. A digital time code ticks in the bottom corner of the screen. 031422 AM. The studio is poorly lit. Only a single overhead spotlight illuminates the rotting suit. It was a beloved local mascot, but the costume looked terrifyingly neglected. The fur was matted, the proportions were elongated, and it stood perfectly, unnaturally rigid in the center of the empty soundstage. For 4 minutes, absolutely nothing happens. Then, a hot microphone hidden somewhere on the set picks up the unmistakable sound of a grown man weeping. The crying is muffled, frantic, and desperate. It sounds like it is coming from deep inside the thick, suffocating layers of the mascot costume. But the chest of the suit isn't expanding. Whoever is inside isn't breathing. Suddenly, the mascot's oversized head snaps violently toward the camera. The crying stops instantly. The suit raises one heavy, clawed hand and slowly unzips its own stomach cavity. Thick, black, viscous fluid begins to pour out onto the linoleum floor. A clean, corporate text overlay flashes across the bottom of the raw feed, added by someone in the control room. Do not let him out. Seal the doors. The dog suit drops to all fours with a sickening crunch of breaking bones. It begins to sprint directly toward the camera lens at an impossible, terrifying speed. The feed cuts out precisely upon impact. I pulled the tape out, my hands slick with cold sweat. A metallic scent of old copper filled the archive room, and then the locked vault door violently rattled. The heavy steel door shuddered on its hinges. A heavy, rhythmic pounding echoed from the other side of the welded metal. I was trapped. Panic threatened to completely consume me. I shoved the fourth tape into the machine, desperate to drown out the sound of whatever was trying to get in. Tape 4 was labeled The Midnight Lullaby.
It was a recording of a 24-hour digital cable channel dedicated entirely to broadcasting repetitive, hypnotic nursery rhymes for toddlers.
In 2005, hundreds of parents reported that their children were experiencing simultaneous violent night terrors at exactly 3:30 a.m. This tape reveals why.
The cheerful animation of sheep jumping over a fence abruptly fractures. The bright colors vanish, replaced by highly classified black and white satellite imagery of an isolated military installation. The lullaby track is completely overwritten by a harsh, robotic text-to-speech frequency. It begins reading a complex sequence of alphanumeric codes and geographic coordinates. It was a number station broadcast. An untraceable intelligence agency had hijacked the toddler's network, using the dead-of-night time slot to transmit encrypted deployment orders to deep-cover operatives. But the transmission didn't just contain coordinates. The audio carried a sub-aural frequency designed to induce severe psychological dread, preventing anyone who heard it from falling back asleep. The robotic voice finishes reading the coordinates. Then it drops the digital encryption, adopting a terrifyingly human whispered tone. It says, "The asset is secured. We are inside the house." The moment the voice spoke, the thick glass of my CRT monitor shattered inward. Sparks rained across the desk. And behind me, the welded vault door slowly creaked open. The thick glass of my monitor had violently imploded, raining jagged shards across the concrete. But the real terror was the heavy steel vault door directly behind me. It was wide open. I threw my entire body weight against the steel, slamming the vault shut and throwing the rusted deadbolt. A fraction of a second later, something massive slammed against the other side of the metal. I couldn't run. The only exit was through that door. Trembling, I powered on the secondary backup monitor and shoved tape 5 into the deck, desperate to drown out the wet, heavy breathing echoing from the hallway. Tape 5 was an internal corporate training video from 1991, produced for a massively popular family pizza arcade. It was labeled Animatronic Maintenance and Biological Safety. The video featured a cheerful corporate spokesperson standing beside the company's flagship animatronic bear. He was walking new hires through the midnight cleaning protocols for the pneumatic joints. But the spokesperson looked terrified. His smile was strained, his eyes darting off camera, and a heavy bead of sweat rolled down his temple, despite the cheerful, upbeat background music. He instructed the viewer to unlatch the chest cavity. The camera zoomed in. Woven between the pneumatic pistons and copper wiring were thick, pulsing, dark red tubes. It looked like organic, living tissue. The cheerful music warped into the slow, sickening thud of a massive heartbeat. A jagged text overlay flashed across the bottom of the screen. "Do not puncture the veins. It will feel it." The spokesperson's voice cracked as he read the next line off the teleprompter. "When cleaning the jaw mechanism, you must never look directly into the optical sensors." In the demonstration, The spokesperson accidentally dropped his cloth. As he reached down to retrieve it, he looked directly up into the animatronic's glass eyes. The machine didn't move like a clunky robot. It moved with the terrifying, fluid speed of a living predator, lunging forward and gripping the man's throat. The training tape abruptly cut to dead static. The corporation declared bankruptcy a year later, burying the true nature of their patented technology. I ejected the tape, shivering as a slow metallic scratching sound began echoing from the ventilation shaft directly above my head. The scratching was rhythmic, deliberate. I didn't look up. I couldn't look up. I blindly grabbed the 6th cassette and forced it into the deck, praying the mechanical whir of the VCR would cover the noise. Tape 6 contained an unlisted late-night broadcast of an early, fully computer-generated cartoon from 1995. The animation was primitive, low polygon, and deeply unsettling in its emptiness. The episode was titled The Digital Maze. There was no background music, no dialogue, and no other characters. Just a single, faceless protagonist wandering aimlessly through an endless labyrinth of flat, gray walls. For 6 agonizing minutes, the character just walks. But the digital geometry is wrong. The corridors are subtly shifting, narrowing with every turn, forcing the character into a claustrophobic, inescapable trap. The character hits a dead end. The camera angle abruptly shifts to a first-person perspective. Embedded in the low-resolution digital wall is a hyper-realistic, photorealistic image of a wooden door. The character pushes the door open. The screen violently glitches. The environment on the other side is not a computer-generated void. It is a grainy, low-light, live-action video feed. The camera slowly pans across a dark bedroom. A young child is fast asleep. The timestamp in the corner confirmed the footage was being broadcast live at 3:42 in the morning. The terror of the broadcast wasn't just the invasion of privacy. It was what happened next. The low polygon digital shadow of the cartoon character stepped out of the camera lens and into the real-world bedroom. The child abruptly sat up, staring directly at the glitching, impossible entity standing at the foot of their bed. The child screamed a silent, agonizing scream, and the broadcast permanently terminated. The network blamed a rogue signal intrusion by a local hacker, but the police never found the bedroom. As tape 6 ejected, I looked at the dark reflection of the monitor glass and realized the scratching above me had stopped. I shined my flashlight upward. The metal grate covering the ventilation shaft had been silently removed. It was lying on the concrete floor behind me. Something was already inside the room. My lungs completely seized. I was locked in a concrete box with whatever had crawled out of that duct. I slammed tape 7 into the player, my hands shaking violently. Tape 7 was a pristine master recording of a beloved 1989 claymation series. The show was famous for its gentle tone, teaching toddlers how to build objects out of modeling clay. The episode started normally. The claymation host was standing in his kitchen, cheerfully rolling out a slab of bright red clay. He told the audience he was going to build them a brand new friend. But as the stop-motion animation progressed, the texture of the clay began to fundamentally alter. The matte, plastic finish became slick, glossy, and wet. The color deepened into a dark, visceral crimson. He wasn't modeling clay anymore. He was molding raw, hyper-realistic human tissue. Dark, thick fluid began to pool on the miniature set, staining the host's clay hands. The host meticulously sculpted the anatomy, attaching a misshapen head. Instead of plastic googly eyes, he pushed 2 genuine human molars into the eye sockets. The cheerful background music decayed into a sickening, low-frequency drone. The animation style abruptly shifted. The choppy stop-motion vanished, replaced by an impossible, hyper-fluid 60 frames per second. The fleshly abomination twitched, and then it slowly stood up on the table. The host froze, his clay smile melting into an expression of absolute, paralyzing dread. The creation slowly rotated its eyeless face toward the camera lens, pressing its wet, bloody hands against the glass. The audio channels clipped out, emitting a deafening, wet, tearing sound. A jagged white text overlay appeared on the screen, reading simply, "Turn around. It is right behind you." The power to the monitor instantly died. The archive room was swallowed by absolute, suffocating darkness. I sat frozen in my chair. I didn't turn around because I could hear it. Breathing. It was standing inches from my left shoulder. I could hear the slow, wet expansion of its lungs. If I moved, if I acknowledged it, I knew I was dead. I blindly felt the desk, my fingers finding the plastic casing of tape 8. I shoved it into the machine. The television violently sparked to life, emitting a blinding white light. A deafening emergency alert system tone blared through the speakers, drowning out the breathing behind me. Tape 8 was a recording of a hijacked emergency alert system broadcast that overlaid a regional cartoon marathon in 2008. It wasn't a weather warning. It was a civil danger alert. The robotic text-to-speech voice didn't warn of a flood or a tornado. It calmly instructed the viewers. Do not look at the corners of your room. Lock your doors. Do not acknowledge the breathing. The broadcast warned of a biomimetic entity that hunted through perception. If you didn't know it was there, you were safe. But the moment you realized it had entered your home, the hunt began. The text scrolled faster, the robotic voice distorting. It tracks human awareness. It is currently operating in the tri-state area. It is currently in the sub-basement. It is currently in the archive room. The red screen vanished. The broadcast hijacked the closed-circuit security camera directly above my desk. I stared at the television monitor, paralyzed, because on the screen, I could see myself sitting in the chair, and I could see the towering, faceless nightmare standing directly behind me. I couldn't breathe. My lungs burned with the desperate need for oxygen. But the towering, faceless nightmare on the security monitor stood perfectly still.
The broadcast had warned me. If I acknowledged it, the hunt would begin. The ambient temperature in the archive room plunged below freezing. A cold gray mist rolled over my shoulders. Then a pale, impossibly long hand reached into my peripheral vision. It didn't grab me. It gently slid the 9th cassette across the desk.
It wanted me to keep watching. It was forcing me to finish the archive. Tape 9 was a degraded recording of a 1987 public access educational show. The title card simply read, Anatomy for Beginners. The host wore a cheap, oversized lab coat, but his face was wrong. He was wearing a hyper-realistic, grinning plastic mask that didn't move when he spoke. The host cheerfully announced that today's lesson was about the human brain. The camera slowly zoomed in on a silver plier resting on his desk. It wasn't a plastic prop. It was genuine, decaying human tissue. The host picked up a heavy, rusted scalpel. There was no background music. The only sound was the wet, sickening tear of the blade slicing through the gray matter. He began to explain how memories were stored, but his voice started to skip like a scratched vinyl record. He repeated the same sentence 6 times.
"This is where you hide your secrets," he said. Then the host slowly raised the scalpel and pressed the rusted blade directly against the forehead of his own plastic mask.
Thick, black blood began to well up from beneath the plastic edges. The host let out a muffled, agonizing scream from behind the unmoving smile, and the video violently fractured into colorful static. The VCR violently stalled. The machine powered down completely, plunging the archive room into a suffocating, heavy darkness, illuminated only by the single piercing red standby light on the deck. I reached out to press the power button, desperate to turn the screen back on. But my fingers brushed against something else. A freezing gold, gray hand was already resting on the console. I recoiled in visceral horror, knocking the 10th tape onto the concrete floor. The VCR powered back on completely on its own. The screen flared to life, displaying a static DVD menu from 2003.
Tape 10 wasn't a broadcast. It was a screen recording of an unreleased, interactive children's DVD. The menu featured a bright 3D animated house on a sunny hill, with cheerful xylophone music looping endlessly.
The recording showed the menu looping over and over, but on the 4th loop, the digital sky above the house subtly darkened to a bruised, sickening purple, The music dragged off tempo. The viewer wasn't pressing any buttons, but the digital camera slowly began to push forward, ignoring the menu options and moving directly toward the front door of the animated house. The front door swung open on its own. Inside, the graphics completely degraded. The bright animation was replaced by low-resolution, photorealistic textures of a filthy, abandoned hallway. The camera moved down the claustrophobic corridor in a slow, first-person perspective. The cheerful xylophone music vanished, replaced by the heavy, wet sound of footsteps dragging across rotting wood. The camera stopped at the end of the hall, directly in front of a cracked digital mirror. But there was no character model reflected in the glass. The room in the mirror was completely empty. A text overlay slowly typed itself across the bottom of the screen in jagged red font. It read, "You have been invited in. Turn around." The television screen violently glitched, reverting back to the live feed of the archive room security camera. I stared at the monitor in absolute disbelief. The space behind my chair was empty. The faceless entity was gone. I let out a trembling, ragged exhale, my breath turning to visible frost in the freezing air. I survived. I thought it was over. Until I looked down and realized tape 11 was already resting in my lap. I didn't put it there. Before I could move, the heavy VCR tray slid open. The cassette was lifted from my knees by an unseen force and pulled into the dark mechanical mouth of the player. Tape 11 bypassed the degraded analog distortion entirely. It loaded in terrifying, crystal clear high definition. The footage showed a brightly lit 1990s hospital nursery. Rows of plastic bassinets held sleeping newborns. A single overnight nurse stood in the far corner of the room, but her back was perfectly straight and she was facing the blank wall. The digital timestamp in the corner read exactly 3 a.m. The second the clock ticked to 3:01, every single infant in the room simultaneously opened their eyes. None of them cried. There was absolute, horrifying silence. In perfect, mechanical unison, the newborns slowly turned their heads to stare directly at the nurse's back. The nurse slowly turned around. She had no face, just smooth, pale, stretched skin where her features should be. She raised a single finger to where her mouth would be, in a silent, mocking shh. The camera feed cut to black. A single line of text appeared on the screen. "We are growing." The heavy glass of the television screen finally gave out, shattering outward and raining glass across the floor. The VCR began to smoke, filling the room with the foul stench of burning copper and rotting meat. The shift was almost over. I looked at the bottom of the cardboard box. There was only one tape left. Tape 12. The label wasn't printed. It was handwritten in dark, wet ink. And it said my exact full name. I slowly picked up the final cassette. The VCR was completely destroyed. I couldn't play it even if I wanted to. But as my fingers touched the plastic, a massive digital monitor mounted on the back wall of the archive room violently powered on. The screen displayed a live panoramic feed of the very room I was standing in, but the footage revealed the ultimate terrifying truth. I wasn't just digitizing tapes. The VCR was a broadcasting terminal. By playing the cassettes, I hadn't been watching recordings of the past. I had been actively transmitting them. I had established the signal. I had opened the door. And on the monitor, I watched millions of thin gray shadows pouring out of the ruined VCR, marching silently past me and out into the open hallway.
I dropped the tape. It shattered on the concrete. On the screen, the towering, faceless entity slowly turned its head, looking past my reflection. It wasn't looking at me anymore. It was looking directly through the lens. It was looking at you.
The entity reaches its massive hands out of the digital monitor. The screen cuts to total pitch black. Absolute dead silence for exactly 4 seconds. No music. No breathing. The signal is live. The broadcast is active. And they are already inside your house.
The night is long and the shift is only beginning. Subscribe before the clock strikes 3.